Welcome to another Your Spending Coach Xero tutorial. So our first tutorial showed you how to set up a client from scratch, Sam's sample, and we also created their chart of accounts or spending categories, and we also loaded in their bank accounts and put the starting budgets in. That's what brought us up to the main screen or the dashboard. You can see on the left we've got Sam's bank accounts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we can see some of his spending categories over here being his wages and his takeaway, which we chose to show on the dashboard. What we need to do now is get some bank transactions into the system so that we can actually start reconciling and showing him how he's going. So what we're going to do to kick things off is manually import a set of transactions into the correct bank account. Now you might notice here it already says reconcile 9 items. I've loaded the transactions in for Sam's bills account, his home loan, his savings account, and his spending account. The last one we've got to do is Sam's credit card. It's really quick and easy as long as you know what you're doing, so I'm just going to show you how to do that now. So the first thing you would do is we're just going to click manually import a statement down here for his credit card. That'll take us to the screen saying we need to get the credit card data. So it tells you what to do. You've got to go to the credit card website, download the bank statement. It's either got to be in OFX, QIF, or CSV. We recommend downloading it in CSV because it's the easiest way to do it. Then you could just hit the browse button to where you saved it and loaded it in, but it actually makes it a lot easier if you prepare the file before you load it up. So I'm just going to show you what I mean by that. So here what I've got is Sam's bank transactions for his credit card, exactly how they export out of a NAB online banking platform. So if I open those up, this is what they look like. Now, you don't want to load it straight in like this because Xero has a bit of a hard time trying to work out what it is. What you actually want to do is name the fields or the rows and the columns what you're actually going to use them for. So the first thing we do is highlight all the cells, see what we're working with. There's only 4 pieces of information that you actually need. These 2 columns here, the blank one, we don't need that, so we get rid of it. This one shows us the credit card number. Well, we don't need that because we know which credit card it's coming off, so we're going to get rid of that. What we're going to do is insert a row at the top, and we're going to label the columns. So this is the date, and this is clearly the transaction amount. What this here shows us is the actual transaction types, so either a purchase or a payment. Here, this is the description, but in Xero they use a field called reference. So to make it easy to know which one marries up to which one, we're actually going to use the word reference. We can put the account balance in here, but we don't actually need that when we get into Xero. Now, when you're loading things into Xero, you've got to make sure that there's no formulas in the cells because Xero has kittens and it doesn't like it. So what you want to do is just click into the cell and make sure there's no formulas there. Yep, that's great. Your date's in a decent format. That's fine. You also want to make sure there's no rows where you've got information that's included in one of the columns but not in the others. So down here we've got a sort of a running balance, and we don't really need that because there's no data down in this bottom row. So what I'm going to do is just delete that one, and my file's ready to go. I'm going to save it, make sure it's in CSV format, not in XLS because it won't work. Just hit yes, it's saved. Now I'm going to go back into Xero. Hit the browse button, go and find my file. I know I've just worked on this one, credit card. And I'm just going to hit open and import. So what Xero is going to do now is it's going to pop up with statement import options. So on the left hand side it's telling you this is what's imported from the file. It says there's 16 lines and you can scroll through each one and see what they look like. And then you've got options on what you're going to do. You basically need to map out how it's going to pull this data through and what it's going to label it as. This is why it's really important to use a header row so that you know which columns relate to which. Down here the box will check because it's smart enough to know that the first row includes headings. But let's just go through it. It's picked up that this date is the date, so that's fine. It's picked up that this is a transaction amount, so that's fine. But then there's 3 that we need to tell it what it is. Because we've labeled this one transaction type, we know that all we need to do is go down and find transaction type, pick that one, and you can see over on the right hand side it's now pulling that information through into Xero to show you what it's going to look like when it comes out on the other side. This one we've got labeled at reference, which is the description of the store of where the purchase was made. Scroll down, click reference, and you can see that's coming up over here, Dan Murphy's. And the last one's account balance. And if we try and find that in here, it's not going to be there. And the reason is that Xero has its own account balance running tally. So we just need to tell this one to be unassigned. We don't need to use it, so we're just not going to include that data to come through. Then we can hit save, and it'll import all of those lines. See, I said 16 lines were imported, none of them were duplicates. We hit OK. And it's going to take us straight into Sam's credit card where each of the transactions are. So we can see on the left-hand side now, we've got the bank statement lines exactly as they've come through from the bank. And then on the right-hand side, we have to tell Xero what to do with that data. Now, before we're going to start reconciling, we just want to check to make sure that all of our transactions are available, because some of these transactions are likely to be transfers between the different bank accounts. So we're just going to go back to the main dashboard after we've checked to see what the date range is for the transactions that are in there. So I'm going to use bank statements. I'm going to click on that tab down here, and it says we've got one lot of data transferred in. Starts, the first transaction is on the 1st of March and the last one's on the 18th of March, which is the date range that I wanted to use. So I'm happy with that. If I wanted to check that for each one, I'd go into bank accounts, click in over here to Sam's bills account, because I want to check that one. And go to bank statements again to see what I've got in there. And I know I've got from that one from the 1st of March to the 21st of March because there was some extra transfers or transactions on that one. If I went through and checked each one, I'd know that I've got all the information there that I need. So it's time for us to actually start doing some reconciliations. Before we do that, we've got the opportunity to set up the automatic bank feeds. Now, Xero has the capability to import data automatically in one or two ways. If it's coming off a normal bank account, then normally what you need to do, if it's one of the big 4 banks, is fill out a feed form. There'd be one for NAB, CBA, Westpac, and ANZ. If it's not those 4 big banks, then if you click this button, now because we've said it's NAB, if we click this button, it's going to take us to a screen that gives us the NAB feed form that we need to print out and get the client to sign. If it wasn't one of the big 4 banks, it would pop up with a Yodlee bank feed authentication screen, which pretty much looks exactly like what you get when you have a credit card. So I'll show you what that looks like. So it's registered. It recognizes that Sam's credit card, we've actually set that up as a credit card in Xero, not a normal bank account. It's linked the credit card to the provider going National Australia Bank, and then it tells you that NAB has got an automatic feed set up with Xero, so for their credit cards. So we can just go in and punch in the client's NAB ID and their password. Now, I'm not going to do that because Sam's a dummy client, but we do this all the time with clients, and we'd use GoToMeeting. We just click in, invite the client to a meeting, we load it up onto this screen, and then we hand control over to the clients, and they can put their numbers in up here. And the great thing is when they type in their password, we can't see what they're doing. So we know that it's all safe and secure. I'm not going to do that at this stage, but if I did, that would activate the credit card feed, and in a few seconds it would pop up and let me know that it's ready to go, and I pick the date that I want the transactions to start coming through from. What we're going to do is go back to Sam's dashboard, and we're going to start reconciling. So the easiest way to do the reconciliations is to follow the TIP or the TIP rules. That means you do transfers first, you do income second, and you do purchases third. The reasons why we do transfers first is because it gets them out of the road. You know it's a transfer between the client's own bank accounts. So from, for example, out of their bills account into their home loan account, there's going to be one transaction in here coming out. There might only be one transaction in here going in. So if we match those two off, then we know that all we've got left is either income or purchases. So we're going to do those first. This is why it's really important to make sure that you've got the client's bank account mud map set up so you can see how they move their money around between different accounts. You want to know which accounts they transfer funds in between. We make this easy for you to keep a track of by in the bank account sheet. You can put some information in here. So we say receives money from, transfers money to. So this client's a good client, so they've only, in terms of their banking behavior, they pretty much just use their bills account as their main hub. All their income and transfer come out of this account. So their income goes into their bills account and they transfer funds out of those accounts. They then don't transfer funds in between each of their other accounts to make things confusing. They just move money in and money out of this bills account into the other accounts. So we know that if we can get all the transfers out of the bills account matched off, then all that's going to be left is income and purchases. So going back into Xero, we're going to start with the bills account. Now, this is where it's really important for you to work with your clients to help them help you. What you want to encourage them to do is, rather than when they're doing transfers between their accounts, just using in the description a generic word like savings or transfer, you want them to be very descriptive. The benefit of that is Xero's smart enough to find words and match them off after you've done it once. So here we've got internet transfer, home loan, principal, Sam. So we know that clearly what they've done in this instance, what Sam's done is he's transferred $1,000 as his principal payment out of his bills account into his home loan account. So I'm going to take the data that I've got on the left-hand side that's come through the bank, and I'm going to go and tell Xero now what to do with it. So our four options are match, which I'll talk to you in a minute, create, which is what you use for income and payments, transfer, which is when you're transferring money between the client's own accounts. It doesn't include transfers out to external accounts or B payments. They're treated as purchases. It's only transfers between the client's own accounts, and those accounts have to be part of your account setup in Xero. If they're not in there and you try and do a transfer, obviously you're not going to find it. And discuss is the function that we use to get information from the clients. So this one we know is a transfer, and it's just asking me which account has he transferred it to. Because he's been good and he's told us, we know it's gone to his home loan. I'm just going to go and hit OK. Now that's done one half of the job. It's sent the transfer out of the bills account. We now need to go and find it and match it off over in his other account. So I'll just show you how Xero works to do that. So we've sent a transaction from the bills account over into the home loan account. We're going to see if it's landed over here. And if it has, Xero should come up with a green box on the right-hand side, which it has, saying there's a match. So what it means is it's found a transfer coming into, which we've just done, Sam's home loan for $1,000, which is this one here, with a transfer that we've sent out of Sam's bills account for $1,000. So before we get click happy and just hit OK, we're going to double check a couple of things. First thing we're going to double check is the date's right. Now it won't always be the exact same date, because if it's coming from if it is one of the client's own accounts, but it's something like a Ubank account or an ING online account, you might have a 1 or 2 day delayed transfer. So the dates don't have to match automatically. What you're really looking for to tell you whether or not this is the same transfer coming in and going out is the dollar amount. So in this instance it's $1,000. Well, is that enough information to guarantee it? Maybe not, because they could do a couple of $1,000 transactions. The way to absolutely have 100% confidence is by this reference that's in there. So inside Xero, even if the client just typed A, B, C, D, E, F, G in the description, Xero would find a transaction going out of the bills account on the 1st of March for $1,000 with the reference ABCDEFG. Over here it would find a transfer coming in on the 1st of March for $1,000 with the same reference ABCDEFG, and it's smart enough to go, these two guys, they match off. It'll suggest it as a match. Now you don't have to match it if it's not a match, and sometimes you will get some transfers that Xero will suggest are together, but they're actually not. And if that's the case, you just hit create and tell it what it actually was, if it was a purchase or a payment, or transfer and say where it's actually come from. But because we know that we've activated this transfer by telling Xero in the bills account that we've moved money over, we're just going to go ahead and hit OK. What it's going to do is it's going to say we're all reconciled, we're done, there's no more transactions sitting on this account. Most importantly, we're looking for this up here. The statement balance and the balance in Xero match, and we know that that matches what the client's bank account actually say, so he owes $449,000 on his home loan. We know that this account is now fully reconciled and accurate, so we can move on to the next one. So now, because we know the way that Sam uses his money and that he actually uses his savings account just to store his money, we can make some assumptions that this one transaction here, because it says the balance in Xero is $20,000 and the statement balance is $21,500, this is probably a transfer of savings from his bills account into his savings account. So I'm going to click into this one because there's only one transfer. I know if I get that one done, then I don't have to worry about this account anymore. And sure enough, there it is. It says internet savings, internet transfer savings Sam, $1,500. We know he transfers his savings from his bills account into his savings account. So I'm going to hit transfer and say that this has come from his bills account and hit OK. This account now reconciles and balances at $21,500. Green ticks, no issues, and we move back onto the dashboard. While I'm at it, I might as well check to see if he's moved any money over into his spending account before going back into the bills account. I can get them all done in one go. So that's sitting on the spent side, and that's sitting on the received side. So we know these ones are purchases. This is received. Looks like he's transferred some savings, some spending money in. So it says internet transfer spending Sam. So we know that that's come out of his bills account as well. We're just going to hit Sam's bills on the transfer button, hit OK. No other transactions on here for transfers, which is why the statement balances don't match off yet. But remember, we're going to get all the transfers done first, and then we'll go through and do the next two steps. So we could go in there now and close that one off and start working on the income. But let's just go through and check that there's any transfers on the credit card, because he might have made a credit card payment. So as you'd expect, on the credit card, the majority of the transactions are going to be sitting in this spent column because he's using it to make purchases. So it's pretty easy to find the ones that relate to his on the transfers. Now we can see here it says there's 2 pages. So it's not on that page. We'll just jump to the next one. Scroll down and see if we can find a transfer. And there it is there. Internet transfer, credit card payment, internet transfer, credit card payment. So we know that's what that is. Again, we know he uses his bills account to do his transfers. So we're just going to hit OK. No more transfers in. Only purchases left. Balances don't balance off at this stage, but that's okay. Now we're going to go and find those transfers in Sam's bills account. So it's important that you understand when you're doing transfers, you only need to send it one way in Xero and then go and match it in the other transaction. You don't want to be sending money one way in one account and then creating a transfer on the other side, because it'll double it up and it'll distort the balances. Plus, if you do it all properly and make sure you take your time in setting the account feeds up properly and the imports in properly and the references, then Xero will do this. It'll find the transactions and it'll just match them off. So we know we just did these three. I don't really need to check them. I can see the numbers match up, the dates match up, so I'm just going to go ahead and click OK on each one. And I'm now ready to go to the second part, which is income. So we know that he gets paid into his bills account, so I'm going to go down and find anything in the received column, which is this one here. So let's have a look. Sam works for ABC Proprietary Limited. It says Sam samples wages. In the transaction type, sometimes it might actually say salary or wages, so it makes it pretty easy to see what it's for. So we now just need to go and code it. So the way you do your coding of your transactions in Xero is name name relates to the company where the money's coming from or going to. So in this instance, the name is ABC Proprietary Limited. That's who Sam works for. That's who's made the payment to him. We can just hit Tab. And then here what I want to do is I can do it one of two ways. When it's time to allocate the spending category, we're either going to click the drop down and scroll through. And I'll start with all the expenses first, assets second, liabilities third, equity, and then revenue at the end. And we know this time it's Sam's wages, so we do 500. Or the way you can do it is if you know the code, you can just type it in, or the way you can do it is just start typing and it'll select down based on the combination of letters. So go Sam's wages, and you can just here go Sam's salary. Now you could create a rule, but at this stage we're just going to keep it simple, and that's all we need to do is we just hit OK. So no more income. And we know that there's no income on any of the other accounts, so now we can start on the payments. So really quickly, I'm just going to show you this account, and then I'll reconcile all the other ones. So here, this is pretty straightforward. NAB, ATM, cash, and there's $100 there. So we're going to say that the transfer was from, or the payment was from NAB. And what are we going to do? Maybe I'll look for ATM. So there it is there. Personal spending, ATM. I can hit Tab, and I can click OK. Now, this is Bendigo Bank Limited ATM fee. So Sam's been lazy and hasn't walked to the NAB ATM, so Bendigo Bank has stung him $2. So we're going to charge Bendigo Bank, and I'm going to look for bank. No, that's not there. I might look for costs. Let's have a look. Got home loan interest costs, personal interest cost, store card repayments, other transport costs. So there's no actual code for this one. So what we're going to do is we're just going to park that one at this stage, and we'll fix that when I show you how to create new charts of accounts. So in here we're just going to write a comment for ourselves, create bank fees and costs chart of accounts category. That way it's my own little mini reminder that I need to do that. We know here he took money out of the Bendigo Bank ATM, so we're just going to go Bendigo Bank, tap ATM, hit OK. And this one, here there's a couple of things we're going to do. We know that part of this transaction is cash out, because quite often people will take money out, but then they won't actually do it at an ATM, they'll do it at an FPOS terminal. So the total transaction is $110, but $100 of that was cash out. So what you need to do is split the payment. Xero enables you to do that over here using the Add Details button. So we still need to say which company it was for. So we're going to say it was from Woolworths. And then down here it gives us some options. So here we're going to say, well, we know that cash out was $100. I might type that in there as the description. And I'm going to make that $100 and ATM. Leave the tax rates alone. You don't need to worry about GST or no GST for these accounts because you're not doing any tax reporting. But we also know that $10.50 was at Woolies. So we're going to make an assumption at this stage that Woolies is groceries. Now you're not always going to make assumptions, and I'm going to show you in the next screen how you check with the client. But it's pretty safe to say that Woolies is going to be groceries. So I'm just going to type in groceries. There it is. And I'm going to make sure these match up. Now let's pretend for a second that I've typed in $11 in there accidentally, and I go to hit save. It's going to tell me the amounts don't match up, so I need to go back and check. Well, okay, I've stuffed up this one. That's $10.50. Now they match up. I hit save. It saves the transaction, but we still need to go and say that it's now time to reconcile it. And click on the reconcile button, and we're done. So I'm just going to show you how to leave a comment for a client if you don't know what transaction is. Most of the time that's going to be on the credit card. So we'll go and find the credit card. Click in reconcile. And we're going to find a transaction where it could relate to lots of different spending categories. Okay, so the first one here is pretty easy. So these first two, you'd say, I'll just say how quickly you can do it. That's Thomas Ducks. We know that's going to be groceries. United Murrumbeena, or Sam's on his own. So we can just put in United Petrol. Here I'm just going to type petrol. And this one here, though, is for Lush at Chadstone. So that's a soap shop. It could be soap for themselves. It could be a present. It could be anything. So at this stage, we don't want to make a call on what the transaction's for, because if you get it wrong, it doesn't affect the end number that falls out, which is their savings. But what it does affect is what their category spending amounts show. And you want this data to be 100% accurate. It also provides you with an opportunity to engage with your client. So here what we're going to do is we're just going to type, hey Sam, what was this purchase for? I'm going to hit the question mark, and I'm going to hit save. Then when Sam logs in, we're going to tell him that he's got a transaction that he needs to make a comment on, and we can actually set that up so that he can have a look and make that comment for us. So that's all I'm going to do in terms of reconciliations now. I'm going to log off and go away and get all of these accounts reconciled, and I'll show you what it looks like once Sam's come back and made some comments, and then we'll get to the next step, which is loading their budgets in. Thanks, and if you've got any questions, remember, just email them through to us, ysc@experiencewealth.com.au.